All right, man, peace. So, NBA superstar Kawhi Leonard of the San Antonio Spurs was expected to be the recipient of his first regular season NBA MVP award by many, including myself. But due to a very debilitating quadriceps injury, it has set him back for the vast majority of the season, and that has led to a lot of consternation by the San Antonio Spurs front office and a lot of frustration by Kawhi Leonard. It is very clear that he does not have much belief in the San Antonio Spurs medical team. Of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
This is SportsCenter right now. I'm Doug Kazarian. It's looking more and more like one of the NBA's best players may not play again this season. A quad injury has relegated the Spurs' Kawhi Leonard to just 9 games. Greg Popovich said the Spurs are playing it safe with their franchise player.
I'll be surprised if he returns this season.
The reason why Pop is saying he'd be surprised if Kawhi returns this season is Kawhi frustrates him very clearly, because Kawhi is so stoic and so reticent in being forthright or being transparent that Pop does not know what mental game to try to play on Kawhi. And the mental games that he has tried to play that normally work don't seem to be working on Kawhi Leonard. And the writing is on the wall, at least for the San Antonio front office, as well as Greg Popovich, that Kawhi Leonard is not going to be long for the San Antonio Spurs. That's why he's so frustrated. Greg Popovich, remember, he has crafted an image of himself as the lead woke NBA coach. So he can't come out in the media and try to demonize Kawhi Leonard or claim that he's dogging it, at least not publicly, because that's going against the image that he has very carefully crafted for himself over the last 5 to 6 years as a maverick head coach, someone who's going to have his players' best interests at heart. So he has to kind of most likely leak certain things to many of his allies in the print media and hope that it will pressure Kawhi Leonard into, at the very least, understanding that next season he better bring forth his best effort, because he's put his entire team in between a rock and a hard place. That is how I believe Greg Popovich is looking at it right now, because even though they're 11, 12 games over 500, whatever they are, they're not going to win a championship. They most likely would not have won one with Kawhi, but they have no chance of winning one without him.
Obviously we support Kawhi, but we can't sit around waiting for anybody. People have stepped up. Marcus has stepped up. Kyle stepped up. He's stepped up. So people are definitely trying to fill the role as best they could. But if he comes back, obviously he's one of the best players in the league. We'll welcome him with open arms. But we have a job to do, and we have to do that with him without him.
Safe to say the Spurs have missed Leonard, who's considered one of the best two-way players in the NBA. San Antonio just 3-7 against the top 5 teams this year after going an NBA best 9-2 last year. Now back to First Take.
No Spurs, no. Kawhi Leonard elected against returning to the Spurs active roster, as you just heard, this season, despite being medically cleared, according to our Wojo Stephen A. How does this make the Spurs look?
Well, first off, let me answer before Stephen A answers. It makes the Spurs look like how they've been looking for a while now, like a team that does a very good job of playing a contender, of playing the background, but never the main character. When is the last time that the Spurs came into an NBA season and people expected them to win a championship? At least the majority of people who follow the NBA. This, to me, is a whole lot of background noise from an organization in the San Antonio Spurs that normally like to play the background. Kawhi Leonard is a mainstream NBA player with a background personality. There are certain things that are not copacetic going on right now. Kawhi seems to me to be making their front office and their coach very uncomfortable, because they're used to having their soldiers very buttoned up. Now, Kawhi is buttoned up personality-wise, but he is not buttoned up mentally. What I mean by that is he seems like someone who is not eager or open to allowing people to get into his head. He does not particularly seem to care whether people like him or not or understand him or not. He knows that he has a talent that very few other people in the world have, and he's confident enough in himself to bet on himself. If he wasn't, I don't believe that he would ever have allowed his uncle to be able to represent him in professional negotiations in the first place. He's just a cat that seems to go by the beat of his own drum.
But listen, like I said, it doesn't make them look good because they're in the news for the wrong reasons. But I'm going to be fair to the San Antonio Spurs. Obviously, Greg Popovich is one of, if not the best. R.C. Buford is a highly respected executive in this league, and Peter Holt is one of the great owners in the game. It's a first-class organization, and I think that people are looking for a culprit here where they very well may not be none. I think that everybody needs to put on this big boy and big girl pants and understand what goes on here. You're Kawhi Leonard. You get rid of your agent. You bring in your uncle, who basically serves as your advisor, your agent, or whatever the case may be. The manner in which the conventional, well-known agents throughout NBA history will deal with a team may, in all likelihood, be entirely different than how this man chooses to conduct himself with the team. That doesn't make him a bad guy, doesn't make him wrong, but it may be different from the level of control that they may have been able to exercise. Now,
let me say this very quickly. Most of the top-level agents in professional sports, they form a dynamic of quid pro quo with many of these sports owners, meaning if you do this solid for me, I'll do this solid for you. If you sign this other client that I have, I will try to talk this main client into maybe taking $5 million less. Those are the things that a lot of people don't know about in the sports agency world, and that's why, if you notice, they tend to demonize agents that are not part of the quote-unquote brotherhood. For example, whenever you have top-level players who decide that they're going to have family members represent them, the mainstream media will normally demonize those agents. You saw it with Derrick Rose. You see it now with Kawhi Leonard. And it's not necessarily because those people are incompetent per se, but oftentimes they don't operate according to normal codes or standards of interactions with owners in front office, who usually operate according to quid pro quo. It's very rare that a top-level agent is going to allow a relationship with an NBA professional team or NFL professional team, for example, to disintegrate over one client, because they know that they're going to have other clients that they're going to bring to the table. When you have an agent who is basically a family member of the athlete, things can get very tense. They can get borderline personal, and that could lead to the disintegration of the relationship between that athlete and the franchise. So very often you'll see in these situations where an athlete chooses to have a family member represent them, that it will quickly go downhill. So do not be surprised to see Kawhi Leonard not with San Antonio if there are any issues with him in the preseason next season. They will quickly look to trade him.
you're going to have others that will sit up there and say, well, who the hell are they to control anything? Well, they're the Spurs. They're an organization. And any kind of organization, there's a hierarchy and there's a level of power. And if you're the coach, you're the executive, and you're the owner, there is some power that you want the ability to exercise. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a bad organization. It's just that this is your preference, doing things your way. Kawhi Leonard doesn't seem, interested in doing things the way that the Spurs are accustomed to doing things. And
is it Kawhi Leonard or is it his uncle? Or both? This is why I led the video stating that, yes, Kawhi is a little off kilter. It does not make him a bad guy, though. Just because everybody else does it does not mean that it's the right way. It also does not necessarily mean that it's the wrong way. Sometimes people go by the beat of their own drum. I've stated this in other videos, particularly pertaining to characters who people might view to be a little off-center, like a Kyrie Irving or a LeVar Ball. There are certain men who would rather live in a hut that is all their own than live in a castle where they have to listen to another man. Who knows? Kawhi Leonard may be another one of those type of people, or he just may being led by an uncle who does not quite understand the modus operandi of most top-level agents in the professional sports world. Who knows?
or at least his uncle doesn't feel that way, and he defers to his uncle. So either way you slice it, that's going to be a problem for an organization that's captured 5 championships, that's sitting back and saying, excuse me, how we've done things all of these years has worked for us. And by the way, you don't hear too many players complaining about being with us when they're here.
Well, that's because they normally have players that have a certain personality type. That is why I always accentuate to brothers who listen to my channel which coaches have associations with the CIA and mind control handling. Because it's very clear that they believe that the best way to attain proficiency and success in sports is to utilize psychological profiling. That's why you have a David Robinson and a Tim Duncan and a Kawhi Leonard, a Manu Ginobili, players who for the most part are very subdued. Now it seems that Kawhi's uncle may have thrown a monkey wrench in their program, or maybe Kawhi Leonard was not as submissive as they thought he was. That's also a possibility. But many of their top level stars are known for taking less. Maybe Kawhi does not want to take less. Maybe he wants to get every last nickel that he feels like he deserves. There's nothing wrong with that.
And so when you look at it from that perspective, we got Steven Jackson that works for us right now, does a great job on The Jump and other shows. Steven Jackson might have had some issues with Greg Popovich, but that's because Steven Jackson to this very day believes that he was better than Manu Ginobili, okay? And that's his feelings, and Steve Jackson's a champion, so it's not like we can just dismiss that. But for the most part, people who play for Popovich and the Spurs usually don't have a problem. So this is foreign to them. This is new to them. And they're going to have to find a way to deal with it because they're in the news for the wrong reasons.
Yes, and also, many of these athletes that play for the Spurs are normally so simple-minded that they fall for a lot of Popovich's lame, liberal, Negro-mongering, to be quite honest with you. Popovich understands that most of these Negroes just want a hug. So he gets on TV and talks about a lot of liberal issues and how black people have been the recipients of racism, blah, 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 blah. I would love to get a transcript of many of Greg Popovich's conversations back when he was in college, or back when he was in high school, or back when he was in his 20s or early 30s, in his private moments, and see what type of terms that he used, especially pertaining to so-called black people. If you're going to ask me, do I buy that Greg Popovich is as enlightened as he tries to act? No, I don't buy it. I think that he's an opportunist. I think that he understands the human psyche very well. And that's one of the things that makes him a great coach. So kudos to him. But you cannot fool everyone with that.
This makes the Spurs look like they're at a crossroads in their history, because I believe they are. Popovich is not going to go on forever. And in a salary cap league, really more than even location, what a franchise has going for it is human capital. They're human resources. And Popovich is foremost among them in the NBA. He runs the organization. He coaches the team. He's the best at both, really, when you consider it hasn't been a free agent destination or anything like that, or a big sexy market.
Yes, once again, that's why it's very important for Popovich to develop a cult of personality where he has been able to convey that he's this open-minded Caucasian liberal. Because he understands, especially with Tim Duncan retiring, that is going to be more reasonable for them to try to create this image of the Spurs as a haven for liberalism to court a lot of the young black athletes than it is to expect that they're going to come sign there because it's going to be a place where they and their family are going to want to live. So, very intelligent move by Popovich to work on crafting that cult of personality image for himself.
Popovich ain't going to go on forever, and I don't care how well, in what kind of a shape he leaves that organization, no matter how good, they will likely suffer in his absence. Just because no matter who takes his place, what are the odds that, Michael Jordan will follow Michael Jordan, right? Popovich is the guy. What are the odds the next guy's going to be as great as him? I don't care how good the organizational structure is that he leaves in place. And so, he's really going to have to figure this one out, because it looks as though the relationship is at a critical point. I don't know if it's beyond repair or not. If it is, they need to figure out how they're going to trade him.
Exactly, and I believe that that's what they're going to do at the start of next season, because I don't think that Kawhi is going to change. What will frustrate someone about Kawhi, especially someone who's used to dealing with a certain type of Negro, is once again, Kawhi is not transparent. He's not someone who seems like can be won over through some type of emotional chicanery. He's not someone who's particularly eager to open up. Kawhi strikes me as someone who believes that his play on the court should be enough for you to understand how to deal with him, and basically, other than that, to leave him alone. And I'm sure that will frustrate someone like a Greg Popovich, who's used to pretty much being able to manipulate whoever he wants. Just the fact that he's been able to be the head coach and also the GM, or pretty much the co-GM along with Buford for a long time, shows that he knows how to manipulate people. He knows how to make them believe or think that he's the person that should that where the buck should stop. He's the person that everyone should turn to for information and confirmation. And I don't believe that Kawhi Leonard looks at him with the level of reverence that Popovich is used to. And I think that that's part of the problem, especially in light of this injury, where it's very obvious that both Kawhi Leonard and his uncle are looking into the NBA past and looking at superstars or people who we expected to be superstars like Penny Hardaway and Grant Hill, and even as recently as Isaiah Thomas, and saying to themselves, look at what can happen if we allow the medical staff to tell us when we should play as opposed to listening to our body. It's very important.
If they do, they need to figure out to whom, because as I said earlier, if you want to trade him to a place he's not going to want to go, you're not going to get a huge return because he's unlikely to sign an extension. So who's going to give you a haul for 1 year of Kawhi? You're going to have to trade him to a place you may not want to send him to. Don't forget, a healthy Kawhi, at least in my opinion, second best player in the league next to LeBron James, and he's still in his mid-20s. So if you think it's not really the injury, it's something else, it's a relationship thing, then if you fix that, Kawhi turns any team really into a powerhouse, puts many teams over the top. Popovich's going to have to figure this out. Can he repair the relationship and keep Kawhi? Or is he going to have to move him, and then to whom, and for what? They are at a critical juncture in their history, the San Antonio Spurs, right now. Well,
before Will Kane speaks, don't be shocked if Popovich moves him, most likely to an Eastern Conference team, and possibly to either a Boston Celtics or to the Philadelphia 76ers. Why do I say that? Because number one, both those teams are in the Eastern Conference. Number two, Boston would most likely have the most to offer up to a San Antonio Spurs team, or you have the connection with Brett Brown and the Philadelphia 76ers. Brett Brown was a former coach under Greg Popovich, and Popovich has made no bones about the fact that he's happy to see the Philadelphia 76ers finally getting better. It's very possible that they could even create a 3-team trade where the Spurs could get a couple of draft picks from the Sixers, and maybe Markelle Fultz gets sent somewhere else, and the 76ers can get Kawhi Leonard. Who knows? And of course, throw a couple of other players into the deal to even things out. Or maybe to the Celtics for some of those conditional draft picks and either a Jaylen Brown or a Jason Tatum. Or maybe to both of them. Who knows? But do not be surprised to see the San Antonio Spurs execute a trade of Kawhi Leonard to one of those two Eastern Conference teams sometime in the offseason.
Well, there's absolutely zero reason whatsoever to doubt Greg Popovich. Matt, you talk about there is no Popovich after Popovich. There is no Michael Jordan after Michael Jordan. It's absolutely stunning what Greg Popovich has done without his best players. You take away Kawhi Leonard, he's won over 60% of his game. You take away Tim Duncan, same thing. David Robinson, same thing. Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, same thing.
Because he's figured out the mathematics of the NBA game. Once you figure out the mathematics of any problem in life, it makes it pretty simple. Doesn't make it easy, but it makes it simple. Now, what a superstar will do is it will put Greg Popovich in the position to win a championship. But without a star, he can still make a team that's extremely competitive because they keep the game how it's supposed to be. They move without the basketball, they take the shots that are open, and all the players on the floor can dribble, pass, and shoot. When you have that, you take away a lot of the athletic factor, meaning you allow your team to be competitive in every game when they don't make as many mental mistakes as other teams, or in the case of most other teams where you have a player who thinks he's a little bit better than he actually is and spends too much time dribbling and taking shots that he shouldn't take. That costs many of these other teams anywhere from 15 to 20 games. If you had Greg Popovich coaching the Phoenix Suns or the Orlando Magic, they'd be around 500 because he would just simplify everything.
Without these guys, Greg Popovich still wins over 60% of his games. And look, this doesn't come easily to me. I'm a Dallas Mavericks fan. And in the mid-2000s, there was some kind of intrastate rivalry between the Spurs and the Mavericks.
Yes, there was. Yes, there was. They played some of the great series during the mid-2000s.
There was some heated nature to that relationship. But the Spurs deserve, to the question we're being asked here, how do we view the Spurs, every single benefit of the doubt in this entire equation. Stephen, now you say, there may in the end be no one that's culpable, but there's tension here. That's what's obvious.
I agree.
The Kawhi Leonard camp and the San Antonio Spurs camp are not on the same page. And set aside what the Spurs have done. You talk about all their championships, all the seasons with 50-plus wins, what I just pointed about Greg Popovich, in my estimation, being the greatest basketball coach of all time. Set all that aside. Tony Parker had, we're not going to call it the same injury, but worse, right? He ruptured his quad. Now, tendinopathy can run for a long time and nag and bother you, but Parker came back from this injury in 7 months with the help of the San Antonio Spurs inside that organization. So here's Kawhi Leonard now saying, or implying, and it looks to appear that he doesn't believe the way the organization is helping him along in this injury process is the right way. So who gets the benefit of that? The gold standard organization who's dealt with a similar situation? I just want to clarify. I understand all injuries are different. Sure. I truly do. Sure. But they've been here. They've been in a similar situation.
Right.
Well, they've been in a situation where they helped an injured player heal. You don't know if the injury that Kawhi Leonard has is equivalent to what Tony Parker had. You don't know that. Also, their bodies could be healing differently. Maybe Kawhi's body is not as easy to heal as Tony Parker's. Who knows? Maybe he was diagnosed with the injury far later than Tony Parker was. You said that it took Tony Parker 7 months to heal. Kawhi was going against the Golden State Warriors last May. So now we're talking about 9 months. He went against them last May. He got hurt. Who knows how long it took them to diagnose the quad issue after that. So it's comparing apples and oranges. Here's what I do know. I don't think that a player who only has 1 year left on his deal is going to sit out the entire season before that and think that it's going to make him a more sought-after commodity on the market. I don't buy that he's sitting out on purpose or that it's a mental thing. I believe that he's truly feeling something, and he does not trust the San Antonio Spurs medical staff. I think that he understands that if he rushes back and he even injures himself more, the Spurs are going to find a way to trade him anyway. And all he's going to do is lose a 9-figure deal.
They get the benefit of the doubt.
Let me respond to that. I agree with you. But in the interest of fairness to all sides, we are talking about Kawhi Leonard here. And I'm not talking about just a great player. I'm talking about a guy who is as quiet and as unassuming, who epitomizes grabbing your lunch pail and just go to work every day better than almost anybody we could find.
Exactly. And beyond that, even more than his quiet nature, is the fact that he does a lot of the more unappealing aspects of the game. Meaning, doing the dirty work, playing hard-nosed one-on-one defense against the game's top players and actually doing an excellent job of it, and then coming on the offensive end and being his team's best offensive player. So that speaks to his focus. It also speaks to his conditioning. So once again, that's why I have a hard time believing that someone who has shown those characteristics could be dogging it for whatever reason. He'd only be hurting himself to be doing that.
I mean, you look at the greatness of a LeBron James, you look at the greatness of Kevin Durant and stuff. They've made news for things that happened off the court as well as things that have happened on the court in terms of their willingness to talk and articulate their position on certain issues and what have you. Steph Curry to a lesser degree, Chris Paul to a lesser degree, Melo, Russell Westbrook, and others to a lesser degree. When you talk about a guy who gives you the impression that he doesn't give a damn about anything other than just going to work, doing his job, and going home.
Or maybe he just understands his limitations. It's not that he doesn't, quote-unquote, give a damn about it. He just understands his limitations. Maybe he's intelligent enough to know that he does not have enough interest in politics to become proficient enough at it to talk about it, which is a quality that is admirable. It's admirable when a man knows his limitations and when he knows what he doesn't know. Many men don't know what they don't know. So they go about making asses of themselves, trying to put on a facade. i.e. LeBron James, okay, i.e. him, making political statements or statements about political figures and not really knowing what he's talking about so that he can get a bunch of thumbs up and a bunch of retweets on the internet from his fellow internet revolutionaries.
It's Kawhi Leonard. So if that's the reality, what I'm saying is we don't get to just dismiss and lump the benefit of the doubt in favor of the San Antonio Spurs in this particular situation because we're talking about a guy like Kawhi Leonard. If it was somebody who was more outspoken, who was looking for headlines, who was the type of person that was a bit vociferous or loquacious or whatever the case may be, that would be different. That's not Kawhi Leonard, and that's what raises my eyebrow here. This is going to make news. It's going to make news for all the wrong reasons. What in Kawhi Leonard's career has ever indicated he ever would think about doing something like that? It's also, in any capacity. That's what...
Exactly, sir. Thank you, Stephen A.
That's where this gets interesting.
Will, it's also not an issue to me of who gets the benefit of the doubt, because we're on the same page. Of course the Spurs get the benefit of the doubt.
No, the Spurs don't get the benefit of the doubt, nor should they. Why should they get the benefit of the doubt over Kawhi Leonard? I don't believe that Kawhi Leonard has shown in his history that he's deserving of getting any less benefit of the doubt than a franchise would. I would never give a franchise the benefit of the doubt. A franchise is going to do what's best for them. They look at any player as a disposable commodity.
It's an issue of responsibility. Whether or not you're the cause of a situation in your life, as an adult, what you come to realize is when people say you're responsible for everything that happens to you, doesn't mean you caused it. It means those are now your problems.
Agreed.
No one else can be responsible for it. You are going to be. So is it the Spurs' fault that this is happening? No, I agree with you. You give them the benefit, Popovich the benefit of the doubt. But they are the ones who are it's going to have an impact on them. And so now it's Popovich's responsibility to make the best of this. I don't think people understand what a uniquely great player Kawhi is, because he did not come into the league with the fanfare of a Kevin Durant, let alone a LeBron James. But he has turned himself into that kind of player. And the loss of him, there's really no way to replace him. You have to kind of change your whole team. Popovich is going to have to deal with this. Make it better or get maximum value for Kawhi Leonard. He's going to have to do it soon.
I agree. And as I stated, look out for them to try to pull the trigger on a trade in next year's preseason if Kawhi Leonard comes back to camp still trying to allege that he does not feel like he's fully healed. They're going to give him this season and they're going to give him the offseason. And the only reason why they're being as patient with him as they are is because they believe that at his best, he can challenge as the best player in the NBA. That's the only reason why they're being this patient.
2019, he's available. You will be back with us in just a moment.
You bet. Yep.
But anyway, good luck to Kawhi. Hopefully the Lord will heal his injury and heal whatever it is that may be disquieting his mind. Peace.